I'm Lawrence Francis, host of Interpreting Wine, welcoming you to the Uruguay Producer Special Series 2023. Across these two episodes, recorded in December 2022 and February 2023, we'll be exploring the modern Uruguay scene in the company of two producers. The most up-to-date exploration of Uruguay wine available anywhere in podcast format. Subscribe to be alerted when new series episodes go live. We kick things off today in the company of Santiago Deicas of Bodega Familia Deicas. We hear Santiago's origin story, and he tells us the roots of the family winery. We discuss Cognac's connections to Uruguay. We go on a climate deep dive. Santiago takes us on a Canelones and Maldonado vineyard and geology tour. Before we taste two wines from their collection, the Atlántico Sur Albariño 2022 and the Bizarra Extravaganza Dark Side Albariño 2021. We close discussing the Bizarra Movement and wine range, and Santiago looks ahead for international travel and connection opportunities. Enjoy.
I'm 36-year-old. I'm food engineer with an MBA in business in the US. And actually, I was born and raised in the winery for the first 2 years of my life. And afterwards, we moved like 45 minutes from the winery. But every single summer here in Uruguay, we have the harvest. So we will go like 2 weeks to the seaside, to the beach, and afterwards to the winery. And I like, ever since I have memory, I've been in the winery during the harvest. When I was quite young, like let's say 10, 12 years old, I was already working, having fun in the winery. And I was going to the vineyards with the agronomists, also making some harvest, harvesting some grapes, distemping or making some work in the vineyard. And also afterwards, I could go to the lab and make some basic analysis. And also that was very comfortable because we have air conditioning in the lab. It's very hot at summer. And then when I grew a little bit more in age, like let's say 15, 16, I could also make some works in the winery, like works with the tanks, maybe some remontage, some maceration techniques, some pisage. And I started in the production, part of the wine work, but also since I was young, my first wine fair at Vinexpo Bordeaux, my father took me there when I was 14 years old. And that was the moment when I realized that I really liked the industry. I liked the wine world, and I wanted to continue in this world because I knew only the production part. But then when you go out, you go to represent your country, to talk about your country, your culture, a little bit about the wine. And also I discovered the atmosphere and the companionship that there is in different wineries. In the country, when you go outside and you want to represent your own country, but also if you go visit a winery, in Bordeaux we will go to a chateau and we will be received by the owner or the winemaker. They will give you the best wines from the barrels, from old bottles. They will charge you anything because it's like the code that we have. We go out with also other wine producers to dinner, to take wines together, to share. And that was what I was like, fall in love in the moment. And since I was young, I could arrange my studies in something that I liked and also could help me be part of this.
Amazing. And could you tell us a bit more about, I guess, firstly, your family connection to the winery, because I know it's a multi-generational winery. And then I guess from there, talk about who are some of the, other main people that are working at the winery at the moment.
Well, it's my grandfather who started the family tradition in wine. He was outsider from the wine world. He bought a winery, and he asked my father also since a young age to help him. My father was starting chemical engineering studies, so he started the lab. We have to imagine in the 80s in Uruguay, wine production was big and wine consumption was huge. So all the wine that we produce as a country, we drank it. So there was not a big necessity of producing high quality wine, since it was not necessary as a business point of view.
Yeah.
Something similar happened in Argentina and Chile maybe a few years earlier. And my grandfather had this idea, since we brought some specialists from Cognac to help us make better Cognac blend, because we were making wine for making Cognac in Uruguay. And he brought some specialists to make to help us increase the quality. And they recommended us to go to fine wine, high quality wine, because they saw like a small part of Bordeaux in our Canelones vineyard, which has this proximity to the River Plate and to the Atlantic Ocean. We have the same amount of rains like Bordeaux, similar temperature, and the soil is clay and limestone, argilo-calcaire, like in Bordeaux. So they recommended us. So you can be making a high-end wine. And a few years later, my father with my grandfather changed everything, and they make this crazy project of making high-end aging wine in Uruguay 35 years ago. It was something very, very huge.
Amazing. And I understand that the winemaker is also not directly from the family. Is that correct?
Well, I'm now the chief winemaker. My father is also very involved. We have a winemaker that is Adriana Gutierrez, which is not part of the family, but is working with us more than 20 years.
Yeah.
And something that my grandfather always said to us is to find the advice of the best. So now we are working with Paul Hobbs as a consultant for the last 11 years. And we had this 11 years ago, we talked with him and said, Paul, let's make a Tanat with international quality, because Paul Hobbs is responsible of the big change in Malbec history in Argentina 25 years ago. And we thought with him we could make a change in style for Tanat, that we could reach the palate and the taste of the best consumers in UK, in the US, and then to the rest of the world. And we were working with him with this idea for 10 years.
Very interesting. And I think the what you've just said there, I think will be maybe certainly news to me and perhaps news to many of the listeners, where I guess, I've seen the modern face of Uruguayan wine and the great promotions that have been done, around Tanat Day and to kind of get those stories out there. But it sounds as though at some point not that long ago, the approach was very different when the approach was geared towards distillation and making, making wine for distillation. So would you just maybe take us back a little bit into that part of the story?
Well, my grandfather, he's still alive, and he's a great businessman, and he saw an opportunity on buying this winery, my family winery, that is Establecimiento Juanico, and now also Bodega Familia Deicas, that was producing wine for distilling and making cognac, because Uruguay had the right of labeling cognac in a label of brandy, because the French government had given us this right, since we as a country forgave a debt that the French government had with Uruguay. Because of the Second World War, we were selling a lot of beef to them, and they owed us a small percentage of that debt, and we forgave that. So then the French gave us the technology, the knowledge, some plants as well, and the right to put cognac in the label.
Very interesting. And was it with which grapes were they making the cognac from?
Uni-Blanc and Fol Blanche, especially. Yes.
Okay, so similar grapes.
Yes.
Very interesting.
And when my grandfather bought the winery, he saw an opportunity of making better management, making everything better, and continue with this idea of cognac. Then cognac consumption in Uruguay decreased very fast, and there was not a business anymore. So my grandfather had to decide with my father either to sell the winery or to change. And there was not a great like passion of making a table wine or very cheap wine. So then was the decision point of going to high-end wines or being outside the wine world. And I know that both my father and my grandfather were already in love with this world. So then they decided to change and go to this crazy project of making high-end wines.
Okay, amazing. And it's great that you've already started, I guess, teasing us a bit, talking about the similarities with Bordeaux and the proximity to the Atlantic. But I wonder if you wouldn't mind just kind of focusing in on that part of the story a bit more, where you could kind of give me and give the listener a kind of a virtual experience of what it's like to be stood in one of those vineyards where you're producing those wines today.
Well, great. Uruguay, it's in the southern hemisphere of South America, between Argentina and Brazil, right in the best spot in the southern hemisphere, in the 33rd, 34th parallel, where all the best wines in the south, like Santiago de Chile, Mendoza, Uruguay, South Africa, New Zealand, part of Australia, all these the same latitude, where the seasons are well differentiated, and we can grow grapes to making really good wine. And the big difference that we have with Mendoza and with Santiago de Chile is the proximity to the Atlantic Oceans and the rains. So in our neighbors like Mendoza and Chile, they had to be irrigated, they had to bring water to the vineyards, because if not, they cannot grow grapes. In Uruguay, our focus is to taking the water out during harvest, because we can have a lot of rains all year long. We have like almost 1,000 milliliters per year in average in the different terroirs. So in this moment, we are in spring, we are wanting to have rains. But then in February, we will start to pray to have little rains, not zero rains, but little rains, so we can have a healthy harvest without any excess of water. Okay. And what you will see here is everything is green, because we have rains all year long. So we have grass, we have a lot of plants, trees with a lot of leaves. So all year long we have greenness in the country. Similar, the landscape is very similar to the countryside of the UK. Very similar. Yes. A lot of cows. We are the number one beef eaters in the world. Sometimes we are number two. We eat a lot of barbecue. If there's a weekend that we don't have barbecue, we start like shaking. It's a Monday, and we have to go very fast to eat some barbecue, because we are like nervous,
Amazing. So the scene that you're kind of painting, I like those comparisons. So it's very green. It could almost be compared to a sort of an English countryside. You're talking sort of rolling hills and, as you say, kind of but agriculturally focused. It sounds. Yes. Not only vineyards, but also other types of agriculture.
No, mainly agriculture with a lot of plantations, and also cows, sheep, everything that we can grow. And also, it's very coastal. We have a huge coast in the Atlantic, directly into Atlantic, and also into the River Plate, which is the widest river in the world. So we have all this sea influence, because the Rio de la Plata is like a sea more than a river. And then the direct influence of the Atlantic Ocean in the half of the coast. And the biggest amount of people is living in the coast. So if you come here, almost every tourist that comes to Uruguay stays in the coast. And Montevideo, the capital, is in the coast. 80% of the vineyards are in the coast, less than 60 kilometers from the coast. So have big influence of the coast in all our wines and in our life.
Absolutely. And what about a sense of the elevation then, and that exact point where the land meets the sea? Are we talking then that these are going to be quite low elevation because they're close to the sea, or are they kind of cliffs and elevation comes in?
is very slow. It's very low elevation. We have slopes, small hills, and there's no mountains. We have like hills and some movements of soils, and we have a very interesting part of stony soils as well. But there's no big mountains, and I think that today the most attractive regions are regions that are gaining low temperature during harvest. And in South America, mainly in Argentina and in Chile, they are looking for either coastal or mountain, high altitude, where the search is the same, is low in the temperature.
Yeah.
And in Uruguay, we have low temperature because of this oceanic influence, and it's very difficult to find a day in harvest over 33 Celsius. So we have like 2-3 days in February and almost no day in March with over 33 Celsius during the harvest. This is quite low for wine production.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's the kind of what I hear a lot is that enables you to essentially seal in a lot of the freshness and the acidity, which is of course getting more popular as a palate, as a type of wine, but then also it lends itself to wines that are maybe for aging or are going to have oak, to be able to kind of stand up to the oak and to have those bigger.
Do you know my interpretation of the temperature? When you have this is easier to understand with reds. When the vineyard is in a comfortable temperature during day with the sunlight, the vineyard can ripen the skin and the seeds in a fast way. So the tannins that you have in the red would be ripe fast. So you can actually harvest in an early stage with good quality of tannins. So in this stage, the flavors that you have in the juice are much more diverse because the intensity of fresh fruit, of flowers, of herbal flavors, of vegetable flavors, and even mineral flavors are in their peak. If you wait longer to harvest because you need to wait because the temperature is super high, and when the temperature is high, the vineyard cannot ripen when the time of the day when the temperature is super high, the vineyard starts to protect itself. It's not ripening, it's not making photosynthesis, it's only protecting itself until the temperatures go down. So the ripeness of the skin and the seeds is slower. So you need to harvest later in a later stage of flavors. So you have more ripe fruit, and all the ripe flavors are similar between each other. A jam, a marmalade of strawberry, blueberry, even peach, even tomato or pepper, the flavors is similar. Whereas those compounds in fresh stages, the flavors are super different. And what is interesting is that harvesting earlier gives more importance to the soil. Because all these flavors are way more different in different types of soils. So you can have a big impact in the diversity of the soils when you can harvest earlier. And to have a good wine in an early harvest, you need to have low temperature. And that's how you make the circle of why low temperature vineyards are getting more traction today, because you have more diversity of flavors, you enhance the impact of the soil's diversity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, something, I understand that you have multiple vineyard sites, relatively small vineyards, and I believe 12 different locations with quite big soil differences. But I wonder if, you wouldn't mind, giving us, I guess, first of all, a bit of a snapshot of, how close together those different vineyards are. But then also, talking to some of the really big influences that have, I guess, shaped that coastline, talking about the geological, fingerprint really that underpins and maybe is held in common by all or most of those 12 vineyard sites.
Yes, well, we have like the biggest percentage of our vineyards, our hectares are planted in Canelones, where the attraction there is the clay and the limestone. And that's very important for Tanat, because Tanat needs to have humidity and suffers a lot the long periods of dryness. And the clay keeps some moisture constant during the dry. If you have like 5-6 weeks without rains, especially during harvest, Tanat can stop the ripeness and it cannot go back to ripening again. And in this region, it's perfect for Tanat. It's the best region for Tanat, especially in dry seasons. Then we have all the most southeastern part of the country, all the Maldonado. We have the Punta del Este seaside resort area with all that region. You have a lot of granite in that region. It's like the main soil is granite, some other type of stones, but mostly stony and especially granite. And then we have other regions, for example, in the southwest, closer to Buenos Aires, where in Sierra de Mahoma, we have a terroir that is vertical schist with very, very little organic soil. So it's very stony, and the schist has no water, so the roots have to go very deep, very mineral, almost like bloody in the taste because a lot of iron. And it's amazing kind of wines. We make amazing Cabernet Francs over there, which are beautiful. And then we have like crazy projects. We planted in the Mother Rock, in a spot that is between Canelones and Maldonado, in the middle, also very close to the ocean. We planted over Mother Rock with a huge effort planting there, and the result is super, super crazy. Wines that have some cereals flavors, some barley flavors, very huge primary flavors, flowers, herbal flavors, peppers, some red fruit in reds. So it's amazing. So we have a big different spectrum of terroirs. So we can also be investigating, researching and making different style of wines.
Absolutely. Okay, and I guess it sounds as though there's been kind of a lot of, is it mainly volcanic activity that's kind of underpinning a lot of those different sites there?
Yes, definitely. There's also a big difference in the soil's age, in the subsoil's age, and we have volcanic origins in everything. But the clay and the limestone has all these different process during the millions of years of evolution. And then the mother rock or the granite soils or the vertical sheets has also this origin in the volcanic movement. And then all these changes in the tectonic movement. And it's quite interesting, the diversity that we have in Uruguay.
Yeah, very cool. And we are very lucky today, and I'm certainly very lucky as well, that we've got a couple of wines to try. In advance, I kind of gave you free reign, if you like, on choosing a couple of wines that we could talk about. So maybe starting off with the two wines that I've got here in front of me. I think the way to introduce these, in of course whichever order that you want to, I think is to maybe introduce us to, first of all, the specific vineyard site. How that influenced the viticulture and also how it influenced the winemaking.
Well, I chose for the tasting Albariño variety, two different Albariños. And Albariño, I think it's very important for us to taste and to talk about because two main reasons. Uruguay has this quality and this potential for Albariño because all this huge influence from the Atlantic, the rains that we have, like in Galicia, and the quality that we are getting for the last 10 years in Albariño is really impressive. And also I think that Albariño as a variety is super relevant today worldwide. There's Albariño planted worldwide, and maybe after the tasting the wines, we can discuss the importance of Albariño as a variety outside Galicia and Portugal, where this is the origin. And that's why I wanted to taste Albariño together.
Okay, amazing.
And the two wines that we have for tasting is the Familia Deicas, Atlántico Sur Albariño, that I would like to start with that one.
Okay.
And then we have a Bizarra Extravaganza, and it's the name of the one is Albariño's Dark Side. And we're going to talk about this idea and why we call it that way.
Very cool, very cool. So starting off with the Familia Deicas, Atlántico Sur.
Yes. Well, this is the result of a lot of research, because when we decided that we will make Albariño 10 years ago, we started thinking about what style we would like to have in the first Albariño that we would look for. And as a family, my father, my grandfather, myself, my brothers, we love this bright side of Albariño, this intensity, this explosion that you have in Albariño, this tutti frutti style, this melon, this the explosion in flavors in the nose, the explosion of flavors when you put the wine in your mouth, that it like it's in all your sensible parts of the mouth and the nose, and the acidity. And also what that is more impressive for me is how this sensation of very young wine can be there in the bottle for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So this style of Albariño, which is very exclusive for young wines, can also be there 3 years in the bottle. So I was amazed when I was tasting Albariños, especially from Galicia, that I thought that they were made this year, but they were made 3 years ago. And that's one of the very unique attributes of Albariño, that can keep this freshness and this youngness for a long time.
Okay. And could you maybe talk a bit about, again, that specific site from where these grapes would have come from?
Yes, well, this specific site comes from Juanico region in Canelones, which is this origin like Bordeaux argilo-calcaire soil. And a little bit also comes from Garzón. We have vineyards in Garzón, in Maldonado, with granite soil. But mainly the heart is the clay and the limestone. Mm-hmm. And I discovered something a few years ago with Galician producers, that in Galicia, especially the producers, they are not wanting to have this brightness or this tutti frutti or this fruit in the wine. They are a step forward, like they get like bored of having all this freshness and the fruit, and they like other style of flavors that we're going to discuss afterward. Mm-hmm. But I love these kind of flavors, and they say that in clay you have more this style of flavors. The fruit and the middle mouth, the bigness in the middle mouth is more given in the clay and less in granite. And we discovered the same thing ourselves. I was amazed how this profile of wine was very easily achieved in clay, and it was very difficult to achieve in the granite. And I'm very happy, because I've been wanting to have these wines, 8 years of research of making wines in different sites. And also, I was wanting to keep this freshness in time. So in my research, the first time we had a good amount of grapes, it was in 2020. Mm-hmm. I put half of the production in foudre and half in stainless steel tank. Mm-hmm. Because I was hoping to have the foudre, the oxidative process in the oak. You have all this exposure to oxygen, so you will have an oxidative expression of the wine. And in the tank, you have a protection from the oxygen, so we will protect all the flavors from the oxygen process. So I thought that the oak oxidative process, blending with the tank at the end, will help me to keep the freshness of the wine in time. And I was disappointed, because when we made the blend, the oxidative side took all the flavors from the reductive down. So all this freshness was lost. I couldn't release the wine in 2020. I had to wait to 2021, because the quantity was very, very little. So I had to wait until 2021. And I discovered that this style of wine has to be very protected from the oxygen. You have to protect the wine, to have all this freshness, and work with the lees inside the same tank. And even the cold treatment has to be done in the same tank. We brought special tanks for the Albariño to have we don't take the wine outside the tank until it's ready. It's the only one that we make like this is the Albariño, and this is the bright side of Albariño that I like very much.
Yeah, and it's really, really interesting. I actually opened this bottle last night, so there's a little bit of air access happened overnight, I think there will be a lot of people listening that have tried Albariños and are kind of aware of it, and I think you're right to make the comparison back to Spain, back to Galicia, and I just wonder if maybe to orientate this to what I've had in the past. I just wonder if maybe you've got more warmth where you are there in Uruguay, because there's all of those things. There is that zestiness, there is that citrus, there's that minerality, but I would also say that there is a well preserved and kind of well balanced out generosity as well. This is again it's very recognizable as an Albariño, but for me it's got slightly more generosity than I might expect to find in a Rías Baixas or a Galician example. And I wonder if also that is the climate.
It's more the clay. The secret here is first of all the clay that gives the quality and this generosity, and then the lees. And I explain why the clay. A few weeks ago, we had a very, very impressive Albariño seminar in Uruguay, where 3 producers came from Galicia, from Rías Baixas, and we were tasting Xurxo Alba's. Xurxo Alba is like one of the most innovative winemakers in Rías Baixas, and he brought 2 different Albariños from the same plot. Half of the plot is clay and half is granite, and the same climate, and you have all the generosity and this fruit in the clay, and the freshness, the austerity, and the saltiness in the granite. So I can say that it's much more into the clay than to the weather. And then you talk about the lees, and the lees, the work with the lees is our objective is to have this longevity and keep this freshness in the bottle. And we had a secondary effect that is very, very nice for us, that it gives a medium palate that it has more volume than you would expect in an Albariño. And the end in the mouth is very long. For a wine young as this, you can have the sense of the wine in the mouth for a long period of time. This is something that we are not looking for, and we are amazed with this. We're very happy with the result. Okay,
as you could probably hear and as you can see, I'm very much enjoying that. And let's switch. Let's go from I like what you've done here in terms of the choice. So let's switch from the bright side of Albariño now to the dark side, because I think that intrigued me when I heard about that being the name of the wine, and I'm sure it will intrigue the listeners as well.
Well, the dark side of Albariño is actually the concept of lado oscuro comes from Marta Castro from Lagarde de Pintos, that she told this idea to Martín Villano, a Uruguayan winemaker that goes there very often, and he told me the idea, and I had this crazy concept in the mind. And whenever you make Albariño or other white wines, but Albariño, you can make a decision. Either you focus on the flavor or keeping the flavors protected from oxygen and focusing on this bright side of the Albariño, or you can be focusing on austerity and on the mouth and on the aging and the potential that you can gain aging the wine in barrels and afterwards in bottle. And it's like the dark side of Albariño, because it's the opposite side of this bright style of wine. And part of our research was making all these different styles of Albariño. And in 2021, we were harvesting the plot of our Garzón vineyard in granite. When we harvest that plot, we couldn't harvest the whole plot. So there was 2 rows left behind, and we brought the grapes to the winery, And instead of harvesting the day after, I said, okay, let's wait a few weeks to see how this will behave. And we waited like 3 or 4 weeks longer. It was crazy because the pH was still super low. The acidity was there, and the flavor and the skin changed a lot. So when we harvest, we had only 500 kilograms, so it was not easy to press and to make a traditional white. So we decided to make a short maceration so we can separate the solids from the liquid, and then we could end the fermentation in barrel. But also the skin was delicious. So we were encouraged to continue a little bit longer the maceration with the skin, because the skin was so beautiful in flavors that we also macerated a little bit longer than we would decided at the beginning, because it was amazing. And then we kept it in a barrel, aging and oxidizing in a very gentle way, and exploring all this dark side. It's in the mouth. The secret here is focusing on the mouth, and the flavors are amazing, but what we are focusing here is on the mouth, and how the austerity of the Albariño, especially from granite, can give you amazing results. And this is our research in this specific wine, that I think is the totally opposite of what we tasted before.
Yeah, and it's super interesting because again, pouring this out last night, I maybe had the hint from seeing, okay, we've had skin contact for 9 days and second use oak barrels and the name, but in the glass it's more of an amber color, which almost took me back to Georgia and quite a few of the wines that I'd had over there. But it's super interesting then to relate it back to you talking about the deliciousness of the skin, because I think equally, while maybe sometimes there's more challenge in some of the orange wines that you have in their youth. For me, this has kind of all of the positive elements from those orange wines, but I still interesting, still complex, still having a lot of the sort of marmalade-y type aromas, still freshness, but without the excessive tannins, without the excessive challenge. It's still kind of retains that drinkability while it also has the complexity, to actually say, okay, this is going to be an interesting food pairing wine. This is going to be, something that can hold its own, I think, in terms of a variety of, cuisines and, I guess different seafoods and, all the different variety of foods that you can get over there.
Well, thank you. I'm really very impressed and happy with the result of Albariño's diversity, on how you can make Albariño in different styles. We also have in the UK a Bodegones del Sur Albariño that is, when I was making all the effort for making the Atlántico Sur fresh Albariño, and we put the Albariño in Fudre, the Fudre was amazing. It wasn't the style that I was hoping for Atlántico Sur, but the Fudre Albariño in an early stage of harvest, in an austere way, coming from stony terroir, gives a beautiful profile of this elegance. You are not tasting the bodegones, but I want to send you a bottle as well, because it has this more Rías Baixas style of austere, but elegant. This you can have some Fudre aged Albariños with this very light color, huge acidity, and austere. Like also, it smells like sea water. That's it smells like sea. And I love this kind of Albariño as well. So it's amazing, the quality and the diversity you can have with this variety.
Amazing. And I think, again, due to the two styles of wine that you've chosen, and looking at also how they're marketed very differently, the style of the label, and really the name that you put behind this Albariño's dark side, which is the Bizarra. On my bottle it says Bizarra Extravaganza, which is super cool. So it hints there on the label around Bizarra being a movement. So I think that would be really interesting to to just explore as well, because again, I think maybe we're getting into the different layers, the different directions and philosophies that sit underneath the what is a Uruguayan really wine movement that's happening, I think, all around the world.
Well, I started like almost 10 years ago. I was amazed how the craft beer movement can be so beautiful of making innovations. And beer, you can produce it every month, so you can be innovating all year long, whereas in wine you have to wait a whole year. So I was amazed by this, so I started making some craft beer, and we started Birra Bizarra as an idea for craft beer. Then we realized that the concept was much beyond the beer, the craft beer, and I was also amazed with the natural wine movement. I started tasting amazing natural wines in 2017, 2018. So I decided that I would like to make some wine in this concept. And the two concepts of craft beer, the purity and the being very strict with the home ingredients from the craft beer, it has some similarities in concept of the purity of the natural wine movement. So I started making the natural wine with our team of the Bizarra movement. And and since then, many small projects have been appearing in Uruguay, very interesting in the natural wine movement. And it is growing a lot in quantity of projects and also in quality.
Amazing. And would you be able to maybe give us a bit of an insight into maybe some other projects from the Bizarra line, because I think that especially is something, again, that's quite new to me, and I think it would be quite new to the listeners as well.
Yes, well, we have our first Bizarra wine that we launched 3 years ago. Is an orange wine. It's a co-fermentation of Petit Manseng and Gros Manseng. And it is also part of our research. We started making some experimentation, and we discovered that this co-fermentation is amazing. And it is a good way of introducing to good quality orange wine that has this complexity, but also some drinkability as well. Sure. It is not designed for aging, but it has some tannins, so you can have a really good introduction to orange wine when you taste our Bizarra orange. And then I'm making some Tanat in amphora as well. Then I'm making a Tanarone, a Tanat made like an Amarone style with natural dehydration of the grapes in the vineyard. And it's like an old style, going back to the old style of Tanat with over-ripeness in flavors, but also with this huge influence of the sea, the iodine, the iron in flavors. And it's a really interesting one to taste. And there's also a couple of wines that I sent you that are also part of our research in how to macerate, how to extract tannins from any grape, especially from Tanat. And I will give you a quick introduction to this concept. We are making a Tanat espresso and a Tanat cold brew. There's no coffee in the wine. The concept behind the maceration is very similar to how you make an espresso in one wine and a cold brew in the other one. When you make an espresso, you have powder, you have hot water, and it's a very short period of time. And you have the coffee ready. And we discovered that for very high-end and good quality grapes of Tanat, we can macerate only from the skin with a high temperature, not thermovinification, but it's like 30, 32 Celsius, where the yeast can survive. We macerate in an almost continuous process for 3-4 days. And we extract only from the skin, and we have an amazing quality of tannins that are the tannins from the skin and not the tannins from the seed. And this is giving us a huge, beautiful result in many of our wines. And I discovered that this technique was very similar to an espresso technique. And I started thinking, what if we make the totally opposite way of macerating? That would be like making a cold brew in coffee, which is the whole coffee. It has no mechanic maceration because it's the whole coffee. then it's cold water and almost one night or even 2 days of maceration with a very gentle like diffusion from the surface of the coffee to the liquid. And we make that. We harvest the grape, we put it in a tank. We make a small pisage to produce some juice to avoid the carbonic maceration. And then we left the must over there like 2 months. And we make the same grape from the espresso tanat, and the cold brew is harvested at the same time from the same plot. And we were expecting to have difference only in the textures and in color. But what was amazing for us is also the difference in flavors. So you will be amazed when you taste these wines, how different they are in everything. It looks like it is a different vineyard. It's mind-blowing how you can affect the flavor profile with the different techniques of maceration. That was a huge discovery for us. And we are thinking of this year making the same thing, but also for blending the wine afterward. It's not just for having crazy experimental wines, but also for gaining quality in blending from the same plot, making different techniques of maceration.
I love it. I love it because what you're doing there, I think, is talking about, the influence and really, where creativity can come from anywhere. And I think that, you've almost in one episode there, you've spoken about, the influence from Bordeaux and, something that's very known to winemakers and, something that's very familiar versus, talking about the influence from a completely different beverage category, which, is fascinating to me because I think that the only way that any business, any enterprise, and again, any kind of drinks category continues to stay relevant is to learn, and is to keep an open mind, because I'm sure as in Uruguay, as in we see in the UK, as we see, in Scandinavia and all over the world, the success of coffee isn't slowing down. And I think that, wine can definitely benefit by thinking about how is coffee doing it? How is beer doing it, as you've already mentioned? How is the spirit world doing it as well? And, it's interesting that you've touched really on all of those, from the cognac to the craft beer to the espresso. So, absolutely fascinating. And as you can probably tell, I could stay here all day, really talking Santiago. But I think really in closing though, and I think, as we sit here at the end of 2022, what I'd really just encourage you to do is to, maybe give us a signpost to where your intentions are to travel, and where some of my listeners might be able to maybe meet you in person and hopefully try some of these wines.
Well, I will definitely be traveling to the UK and the US both next year. I have to decide when next year. I'm deciding this with my team, but I will be. I hope to be there the first half of the year. I also will be willing to be in the Rugby World Cup in October in France. And I'm a big rugby fan. I'm still playing rugby today, not in the national team anymore, but I have many friends playing in the national Uruguayan team, and many trips to Brazil for sure. And well, I think that most important travels will be in those markets.
Okay, and then just in closing then, could you just let us know where we can find you online, maybe via a website and a main social media handle? Well,
I'm quite active in my Instagram account, is at Santiago Deicas, and also our winery Bodega Familia Deicas is really we are making a nice effort posting over there, and then in the website Bodega Familia Deicas as well. And then the Bizarra Wines also has its own movement. Mundo Bizarra is the Instagram account. And I think over there we can chat. You can ask me anything by my Instagram account. I like to answer over there.
A huge thanks to today's guest, Santiago Deicas of Bodega Familia Deicas. Please do visit the website familiadeicas.com, where you can learn more about the project. Please do help to amplify this episode and the series by sharing the direct link, which is interpretingwine.com/539. And you can find links to both series episodes in the description below. And of course, I'd love to have you following along with me on social media, where I'm at Interpreting Wine on Instagram and Facebook, and at Wine Podcast on Twitter. Next time on the Interpreting Wine Uruguay Producer series, in the final episode, 540, I'll be speaking with Francisco Carao of Bodega Chapter. Make sure you're subscribed to be alerted when the episode goes live. See you then.